Hello, and as you may or may not know, I am currently an English teacher living in China, and this semester I taught a module to my students on animals. And as it was coming up to exam time, we had to do a review of the vocabulary, and for the purpose of this, I got them to do a group task. The purpose of this task being that they needed to create a new creature. And there were a couple of stipulations to this. They couldn't just take a whole creature from Earth, and also they couldn't just take a creature from fantasy, mythology, or fairy tales. So they can't just take a dragon or a unicorn and say, that's my creature. It needs to be a totally new creature. However, it can be inspired by what they know. So they could take a bunch of animal parts of animals that they do know from Earth and create an amalgamation. So they needed to take in account the animal's habitat, its environment, its animal class, how it traverses the environment, how it uses the world, how it hunts, how it gets its food, what parts, qualities and characteristics the animal has, and a justification of every part, not just having a horn to be, or a spike to be dangerous and cool, or having some colours to be pretty. I want every part of this creature to have a purpose, and there was one group which really excelled. And because they excelled so well, I decided to take their creature and 3D model it and present it to them as a gift. And without further ado, let me introduce you to the Madobi Dragon. The Madobi Dragon is an amphibian. Its habitat is the desert. The length is 1 meter. Width is about 5 centimeters. They breed in water. Their diet is carnivorous, and they mainly eat insects and small reptiles such as lizards. However, they also eat fish and can drink water. It has a falcon head, yet also an extra long and sharp beak. The Madobi Dragon has a very long significant beak, and the long beak and poison will kill any living thing in just one poke. The mane is used to protect its neck, which is its critical point. The Madobi Dragon uses its beak to pluck the mane off during summer as it gets too hot. It also provides concealment and protection from the desert winds, and also can provide resting for its head. The snake body allows the Madobi Dragon to slither around very quickly. Also, it helps to hide from predators since it is very flexible and can change into many shapes. It can also swim in water using this body. The fins have 2 uses. 1, to attract mates and to breed with them, but also they can be used to scare predators. So it can also have more balance when it's swimming in the water in the oasis. If we go towards the tail, we can see there is another head. Extra information. The Madobi Dragon has 2 heads. One is for morning and one is for night. So the Madobi Dragon never seems asleep, but is actually 2 heads rotating. When the other head goes out, the head that was out goes back into their mane, but leaves the beak out because it is poisonous and can be used as a sting needle. The Madobi Dragon gets rid of junk by spitting out a furball-like thing. Because when the Madobi Dragon eats, it does not spit out all of the bones and stuff, so many of those things don't get digested, so it just spits them out. So, as you could see there, that was their 3D printed creature in a nice little metal tin. I brought it in the tin, mainly just to protect them while I transported them. They weren't actually that delicate, but it's just because I have lots of heavy stuff in my bag. But also being in the metal tin, I could hold it up, give it a little tap, draw their attention to then open, emerge, and place each creature into each student's hand and create a little bit of drama. The students were very pleased with their creatures. They really enjoyed them. They were very surprised. They never expected to ever get anything like this. And also a fellow teacher told me that the students proudly displayed them on their desk for the rest of the day during the rest of their exams. However, oh yes, and also, one student also asked me, "Teacher, are you rich?" I'm like, why? It's because you have a 3D printer. So I then need to explain that I'm not rich, and 3D printers are actually relatively cheap nowadays. But yeah. However, also, funny thing, one of the students had the gall, the audacity, to tell me, "Teacher, the creature is wrong. it is not the same dimensions from the initial design. And because of that, I needed to explain why it wasn't the same, mainly due to the purpose of 3D printing, but I'll also quickly do it now as I talk about how I made the Madobi Dragon in 3D and printed it. When it came to modelling this creature, I chose to model it in ZBrush. Now I do know other programs, however ZBrush is the one I have the most experience with, and I would mainly be relying on Z-spheres, which are essentially large circles which you can use to quickly create a mesh in your shape and then manipulate it. And because it's a snake, it became very easy to just block out the shape. Now, when I created the silhouette, I made the Madobi Dragon much thicker than it actually is. This is because if you 3D print something that's long and thin, it's much more likely to break, and I wanted to make something that is durable. And it tends to be quite long and not necessarily bunched up, but I bunched it up to create a nice base so our creature wouldn't just fall over. If its head was up and it was just long and thin, it would be liable to tip. But let's just make it sturdy. So anyway, after I went ahead and I had my Madobi Dragon all blocked out, I converted that to a mesh. I just built up each section. I just sculpted around, well, not sculpted, but moved the head around a bit, put a little bit of clay build-up around the eyes, and made the cobra kind of body because the Madobi Dragon has this mane, but it's quite puffed there like a cobra shape. So I needed to get that cobra shape in there to help accentuate this neck section. Now fortunately, when you print things, they're relatively small, and this creature that I'm printing wouldn't be massive. So the feathers themselves didn't actually need to be that detailed, and they could be just some little spikes coming off. For this, I used the snake hook. You can just select a piece of geometry and pull it out in a direction. It resembles feathers. On the 3D sculpt, it doesn't look that great, but for the scale of the creature we're making, once it's printed, it's perfectly fine. Then I just went ahead, added detail to the rest of the model, just drawing in each little scale quickly, and then start fluffing up the tail. Fortunately, they said the creature's overhead was hiding in the tail, so I don't need to actually model the head. I'm just going to model the tail and assume it's hiding within. With that, I then needed to add the fins. Now fins, they're relatively thin. Once again, it's 3D printed. If I attempt to print something that thin, it's just going to snap off. So I made them very blocky. Fortunately with ZBrush, you can just mask off a section and extrude that via the mask. And after you smooth it, it becomes quite thin-like. I then added just little grooves in and out, just to make it look like it's a little bit more wavy than it is. And with that, it was a wrap. I had what I want. It only took around 2.5 hours, was relatively quick. And that was it for the modelling. Went ahead, put in Cura, printed out at a height of 1mm, and it took around 4 hours to print. I just used basic supports for this. The only part I was concerned about was the beak because it was relatively thin and long. However, once it printed out, it was completely fine. Mainly because our beak went horizontally, so it layered each line lengthways, whereas if it was a vertical print upwards, there'd be lots of little structural points that would make it easy to snap off, but because it was long complete pieces, meant it was actually quite sturdy. But yeah, overall, ended up being a really good print. I would have went ahead and painted them, however I had a time limit. The students completed their creature on Friday, and the day I had to give them the creatures was Wednesday. I used Saturday for modelling, I printed on Sunday, printed 2 on Monday, 1 on Tuesday, then give them to the students. Would have been nice if they were painted, but I don't mind. It was less work for me, and also they still really enjoyed the creatures. So anyway, with that, that's project over. Overall, I was very, very satisfied with how this project turned out for a multitude of reasons. Firstly, for the students. I want to show them if you go above and beyond and you put in the effort, that you can have some kind of reward for that. And I want to encourage that kind of behavior. Also for them themselves, they've had something that's very engaging, unique, and significant within their education, and will definitely be a highlight. But also more personally for me, it's good because this is like a little representation of me myself being a teacher, knowing how to 3D model, and also being interested in 3D printing. So yeah, it's very good just on that aspect or that level as well. But yeah, I was really happy with that. I really enjoyed it. And if you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed the project, feel free to subscribe. If you want to see more of me in the future, if you have any comments on what I did, you can leave a comment below. And if you liked, feel free to like. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.